Ahoy cruise thuzies. I guess this is video number 3 in our little series about cruising as an introvert. Today we're going to talk about just some tips for you when you board your cruise ship as an introvert, a self-identified introvert, whether or not you've taken a test or whatever, even if you just don't like people. Here are some tips that I have found work when boarding a cruise ship. Just to catch everybody up, yes, I am, despite what you see around here, a classic introvert, the kind that doesn't mind performing and speaking in public, but, generally would just rather avoid, chit-chatty situations and small, personal, pointless interactions. Not that any interaction with you fine folks would be pointless. Always say hi, but you know what I mean. So here we go. Tips for some introverts when you are boarding your cruise ship. And at the end, I'm going to talk about which cruise lines I think would be best for an introvert and ones that might not be so great for an introvert. Okay, before we get started, of course, see, I'm getting better at this. Please go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, and let's see if it turns into a rainbow. If you find anything in this video helpful or amusing, go ahead and hit that like button. I am a real person, no AI slop around here. Okay, here we go. Tips for introverts on a cruise ship. On Embarkation Day, all right, this is when you get the lay of the land, explore the ship a little bit, something that you can very easily do on your own. Also, if there is one, check the guide for a cruise ship tour. This is done ship by ship. It's not really even a cruise line policy. I've seen it kind of randomly on different cruise lines in certain places, and it's a good way to get to know the ship. And if there are other would-be, soon-to-be, potential ship nerds, it might even be an interesting way to meet them. Find the quiet spots. While you're perusing the ship, go ahead and keep an eye out for the little unused lounges, the bars that are out of the way, the seating that is somewhat out of the way. A good place to go and retreat to just to catch up with yourself and take a break from everything that's going on. Some cruise lines have chairs that are out on deck, provides a great view, and nobody really goes out there anymore. I remember these on Queen Elizabeth in Alaska. That was a fantastic place. On Crystal Serenity, they had some chairs at the aft. They were not by the buffet. They were down several decks. You could just sit and watch the water go by. I think even Rotterdam had a few of these in back. Other cruise lines will. I don't know if they're supposed to be there. I found a couple of random chairs on a couple of Royal Caribbean ships, but I don't think they were supposed to be there. I think the guests dragged them over there themselves somehow. But yeah, go and find the chairs out on deck. Many ships also have a library. That is a wonderful place to just go and sit quietly, read. If you have headphones, you can go ahead and watch a video, one of my videos or something. And yes, there are plenty of lounges that are around the cruise ships that are out of the way. So take note of them and see if anything is going on in the schedule, because some of them are used very, very rarely. Yet they are near what's going on. So you can still keep tabs, but you won't have to, be right in the middle of the fray. Also, might take a couple days, but there are often certain bars that are never crowded. So keep those in mind. I just go there because it's faster service, right? But if you just want to sit and have a cocktail unbothered, that might be a good thing to do. So yeah, go and find all of the quiet spots on the ship on Embarkation Day, okay? Next, go and talk to the hostess about getting a solo table. Depending on the cruise line, this may be easy or it may be incredibly difficult. MSC seems to still have a problem with this, right? So just keep that in mind. But very often, if you do have assigned dining and the ship is not fully booked, they can often accommodate you. Just go ask for a 2-top and they'll go ahead and make that change for you, no problem. Or, like I said in the other video, you could just show up every night for the anytime service and get your solo table then. Be prepared, though, for there to be a wait if they're particularly busy. Maybe don't go during prime time, but definitely go and ask the hostess for a solo table. Let's see. Oh, right. This is a big one. You know what? If you got the money or are willing to spend the money, go and ask about the out-of-the-way retreats, the upcharge retreat type areas. I think the retreat is on Celebrity, or yeah, that's on Celebrity. Princess is the Sanctuary. But there are other venues. On Norwegian, there is the Vibe Beach Club. And even on packed cruises on sea days, there's still plenty of space. There'll be people around, but you know what? They're not on top of you like they would be on the bull deck. Go and check out the thermal suite. This is a fantastic option on almost every cruise ship. I have only seen it packed near the end of the cruise on a sea day when I guess everyone's trying to get their benefit on MSC, because Voyagers, high-level Voyagers get a free hour. So everybody, like me, I do this. I'm guilty, 100% guilty. They go and try to cash it in on the last day or the next last day. But every other time, it has been quite quiet in there. The best thermal suites that I've experienced are on Norwegians. Those can be a little bit variable, right? Some days they are super, super crowded. Other days it is a ghost town in there. Although I do remember on Norwegian Prima, it was always quiet in there. So, you might have to go and check it out first. But if it's quiet, there you go. So definitely check out the thermal suites, the Vibe Beach Club, and any sort of Upcharge sanctuary area they might have on the ship. All right. Next up, in the cabin, ask for split beds. I know I said this in the other video, but it does provide a very nice way to take a nap during the day, just to go and lie down, get that 5-10 minutes of shut-eye without getting the other bed mussed up or dirty or anything like that. Keep that one nice and clean and tidy, and then you have your bed for other things like sleeping. That's pretty much all it's been lately, but hey, that is all right. And ports, there you go. This is something that you're going to have to think about ahead of time, whether or not you're the kind that's going to go and explore a port on your own, or whether or not you might want to be part of a tour. I will tell you, the reason tours might not be the best thing is because you are essentially trapped. And very often there will be people that want to talk. And it's just, it's just a fact of life. So a lot of people do travel solo, and a lot of solo travelers do want to strike up conversations. If you are okay with that, then maybe a group tour will be fine, but it does happen. So maybe consider this a warning. There's nothing wrong with exploring the ports on your own, especially if it is a port that was developed by the cruise lines. I'm talking about places like I was just in La Romana, or I'm about to say the Azores, not the Azores, or not even Grand Cayman. The one that's right there where the Royal Caribbean guest was found with a bullet. I'm totally blanking out right now, but Roatan, Mahogany Bay, any of the private islands, of course. Well, you don't really take tours there. And at Amber Cove, that's a great example of a cruise port that was developed by the cruise line. Actually, Puerto Plata, really, they have a well-developed little, tourist area right there. And any of the big islands, like St. Martin, while those ports aren't developed by the cruise lines, they're very, very cruise focused. And I'm still trying to think of Cockburn Town. Where is this? Oh my God. The Caymans, I keep wanting to say the Caymans. It's not the Cayman Islands. It's going to come to me in a second. And it's not St. Vincent either. Oh boy. So yes, those kinds of cruise ports, don't worry at all about going and exploring on your own. You'll be totally, totally fine. And then of course, when you go to the gym, port days are always the best. Port day mornings are always the best because everybody else is either off or they are doing something else while everyone is away from the ship. So that's the best time to go to the gym or the spa, and probably the thermal suite too on those port days, especially if it's a port maybe you've been to before or don't really have any interest in seeing. So there you go. And I'm still trying to think of that port. I can see it. We were just there. They have a rocket garden. Where is this? It's not Grand Turk. It is Grand Turk. There you go, Grand Turk. Okay. I knew I would remember it. Okay. Another thing to consider is you might want to consider a more luxury experience. These ships will always be less crowded than, any Carnival, Royal Caribbean, or right now MSC ship. And they have a lot of the spaces that I talked about in the other videos, okay? They have the quiet lounges, they have the observation lounges, they have the wine bars, they have the thermal suites, they have libraries and things like this. And even if they don't, they're not going to be very crowded. I make a joke about, the ghost ship. Well, that was pretty much Explorer 1 the whole time. That was pretty much Crystal Serenity the whole time. And, so if you want a place where you're just not going to encounter people because there aren't that many of them, maybe consider a more premium brand. Yeah. It's funny. Oceania Allura. It was a pretty large ship. Maybe not for you, but the ghost ship Crystal Serenity, might be a fantastic place if you just don't want a lot of people to deal with, to begin with. All right. What cruise lines would I recommend? Actually, let's start this. What cruise lines would I not recommend for an introvert's first time on a cruise. Okay, so these are some of my favorites, but I have reasons. All right, so first of all, Carnival. Yeah, Carnival is pretty chaotic. There is a lot going on. It is definitely a fun ship atmosphere, a very party atmosphere, and there are people partying. There are people that are cutting loose, and yeah, they can get very, very annoying. Do not take a 3 or 4 day Carnival sailing out of Miami. Absolutely not. That is absolutely not the thing for you. The longer sailings on the larger ships, talking about the Excel class, that might be a little bit more, handleable. But the thing is, they are still crowded ships, and there's still a lot going on. And while they do have like the Serenity and all that kind of stuff, every time I went there on Mardi Gras and Celebration, there was a lot of people there. I mean, the bar was full, the pool was full, there were no chairs anywhere near, so even that was kind of crowded. All right, so next up, I'm gonna have to pause for a second, so I'm gonna try this again. It seemed to work last time, but we are back. All right, second cruise line you might want to avoid, even though it's one of my favorites, Margaritaville, for pretty much the same reasons as Carnival. It is very much a party and festive atmosphere, and it would be difficult to escape that type of partying and festive crowd. Once you get used to cruising, both of these experiences are probably fine, but if this is your first cruise, maybe not so much for you. I would also avoid the Royal Caribbean mega ships, because while they are admittedly a little bit more upscale than the first two, they are still Royal Caribbean mega ships, and there is a lot going on, and they are actually more crowded probably than either Carnival or Margaritaville ever would be. Royal Caribbean is doing fantastic, and I heard that a lot of their ships, a lot of their sailings do go out plus 100% capacity, so there will be people everywhere. Royal Caribbean has become very good at managing crowds, but that just means they have crowds that they need to manage. And I'm talking specifically about the Icon class and the Oasis class. Now, if you can find a sailing, well, it will only be on Oasis class, that is underbooked, that might actually be good, because that means there's going to be a lot of empty space on the ship. But I don't think you're really going to be able to find that. Certainly not on Utopia of the Seas or some of the newer ships. Maybe a random Oasis of the Seas or Allure of the Seas, sailing somewhere around, so at some random week that school just started. But yeah, otherwise, no, I wouldn't. The smaller Royal Caribbean ships probably would be a lot better. But yeah, the Royal Caribbean mega ships, way too much going on. And the last two, specifically for the dining, because they do make it difficult to, get solo dining. MSC, yeah. If you're okay going to the buffet, MSC might be a good option. They do have a solo program, but they are pretty much just as active, especially for their big new ships, as Royal Caribbean. So I don't know. They're kind of like trapped in the middle, where they can be good for I'll put it this way: the ships do have a lot of places you can get away to, and the thermal suite is fantastic, and it's usually not very crowded, but they are selling out a lot, and I think it might be a little bit difficult to find that quiet space. So the last one, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised about, but it is Disney. I know. There is no hope of getting a solo table on a Disney cruise ship for the dinner shows, right? For for Arendelle, the Lion King, whatever. That's not going to happen. If you want a solo table, you can definitely go to the Upcharge restaurants, Enchanté or Palo, but in the dining room, it's not going to happen. Lunch, yeah, for sure. Or even if you're in one of the regular restaurants, on some nights they might be able to accommodate you, like in Lumiere's or something like that. But for the shows, absolutely not. You will definitely be sitting with other people. And even though Disney does a fantastic job of keeping the adults and the kids separate, like with the adult areas are still kind of crowded because there are a lot of Disney adults. So just get ready for that. All right, best cruise lines for an introverts, especially on the first cruise. Okay, oops, just noticed that. Sorry. Let's see. Do we go in reverse order, or do we go in best to worst, or worst to best? Okay, you know what? Let's just do it this way. I think the best cruise line experience for an introvert who's just testing it out would be Norwegian, because you can get your solo cabin. You're not reminded that you're traveling solo. Well, you are, but without the double cabin. Anyway, it makes sense to me. They have a fantastic solo program that is led throughout the whole experience. There are very few, unless you want to get together, of course. They don't just dump you in a room and expect everybody to, talk amongst yourself, which is really, really good, right? It's like a permanent icebreaker. It's easy to get a solo table because of freestyle dining. The only drawback is you might have to wait, but realistically, everybody has to wait. And I think you're just put in the regular queue. So, if you are one or two, walk up, you're just in the same place in line. So you're just with everybody else and you can just request a two-top table. And then especially the mega ships, the newer mega ships, the ones, the Bliss and later, and all of the Prima class, they do have the observation lounge, which is probably the best place to retreat to at sea because it is large, it is luxurious, they have all sorts of fun seating, and they always have snacks and a bar, and it's just a great place to go and just get away from everything. All right, so I would say Norwegian, probably the best choice. Second, I would say Holland America. It is pretty low-key, but there's a lot of things going on. It tends to be an older crowd, but one that still has a little bit of, activity to them. Their ships are meant for cruising exploration, so they do have an observation lounge, but they're not very rowdy. And, if you do want to just have a nice quiet day, no matter where you are, that's pretty much what it's going to be. And it's very easy to avoid the late night crowds. Just don't go to like BB King's or whatever it is, and you'll be fine. Princess, I think, also would be a fantastic option because there is a lot of low keyness depending on where you are on the ship, but they do have the full slate of activities. In terms of activities, parties and everything, they do everything almost that Royal Caribbean does, but with the older crowd, with the older, more moneyed crowd, it's not as chaotic as what you would find on Royal Caribbean or Carnival. So, yes. Now, I don't know. That was my experience on Caribbean Princess. Not so much on Sun Princess. So, I don't know. I got to take a ride on a Royal Class ship sometime and just to compare that. But, yeah, I think the best cruise lines, first would be Princess, then Holland, and then Norwegian. That would be, unless you can afford Explora or Crystal or, one of those brands. If you can, then, go ahead, try that first. And if it's too sleepy, right, if it's too, pretentious, then maybe take a step down to these guys. So, all right, well, there you go. Tips for an introvert boarding a cruise ship for the first time and what I think are the best cruise lines for an introvert and what cruise lines I think, introverts should avoid. Oh, and now, mind you, you can become like me. Right. If after you've cruised a few times, but all of the procedures and processes and everything, then everything else becomes handleable. You can deal with Carnival, you can deal with Margaritaville, no problem at all. But for starters, keep it low key. Keep it a cruise line that understands how to treat solo travelers and provides the ability to just not be active all the time. Okay. Yes, these were and these are just me talking. So, yeah, I just have notes. Okay, I don't know what's coming up. Let's see. Hopefully, by the time you see this, I might be on a road trip. I'm not really sure, but you can go check I Am Miami for what I am doing right now. Who knows? I might be getting on an airplane soon. I haven't really decided. In fact, I don't even know when this video is going to come out. So if you're still here, then you better have hit that subscribe button. Seriously. And that like button. Okay? All right. If you are on your first solo cruise as a introvert and we happen to be on the same ship, then come on. I really want to see you out of the cabin.